From the woman who constantly shouted "Si se puede" when people tried to tell her it was impossible, to the woman who put everything and anything on the line to stand up for what she thought was right. Dolores Huerta makes history for improving the lives of many farm workers all throughout the country. Dolores Huerta took a stand to improve social and economic conditions for farm workers. It was through her sacrifices that she was able to organize the farm workers movement in California. Her work, which included boycotts, strikes, and speeches, had nationwide impacts for farm workers.
I had a very rich childhood. I was very, very blessed and fortunate because my mother was a person that really believed in culture. Early on, I was a Girl Scout from the time I was 8 to the time I was 18 years old, very active in Girl Scouts. As a teenager, I belonged to the church choir. I was involved in dancing, both folklorico, flamenco, tap, and ballet. I took music lessons, both violin and piano. The only negative thing about my teenage years, and especially in high school, was the racism that we had to endure because we were Mexican Americans and because our group that we all hung out with, there was all the Asians, the Filipinos, the black kids, and the police were always giving us a hard time, so we faced that.
Dolores Huerta was born on April 10, 1930, and is currently 86 years old. She was born in Dawson, New Mexico, and when her parents divorced, she moved to California with her mother. She was raised in an agricultural community in Stockton, California, and she also started her first organizing in Stockton.
I think the one thing that really kind of hooked me for life was going to the home of some workers who did not have a linoleum or wood on their floor, only dirt. And yet these are people who are working very hard, and you know that this is wrong.
She paid attention to the needs of the farm workers she was organizing. They had very low wages, no facilities, no fresh drinking water provided, and they were exposed to harmful pesticides. She moved to Delano, California, and she and Cesar Chavez founded the National Farm Workers Association. To finance union efforts, they worked in the fields and picked grapes. They got to experience what farm workers had to deal with daily. They got many farm workers to join their union and fight for their human rights. They took a stand and fought by striking, protesting, boycotting, and by giving speeches.
Este día, el fruto de la unidad del campesino. Pero lo que estamos fincando aquí es una organización, una unidad para hacer los cambios sociales y económicos que necesitamos para ser hombres y mujeres libres. Y vamos a ver la victoria pronto, compañeros. Bueno, muchas gracias, compañeros, y que viva la causa. ¡Que viva la huelga!
For example, the Delano grape strike went on for 5 years, and it was a nonviolent strike. They weren't able to win because people kept getting arrested.
And then in 1965, we had a huge strike where thousands of workers came out on strike.
Striking grape pickers from Delano began a 300-mile pilgrimage northward.
And that strike went on for 5 years, actually. The strike started in 1965. And it didn't end until 1970. We couldn't win the strike because they kept arresting us, and they kept bringing in more and more strike breakers.
During the strike, Dolores was beaten by police so badly she had to be hospitalized. They broke 6 of her ribs and also damaged her spleen, which had to be removed.
During the strike, there were times when my home was terrorized in the middle of the night, my windows broken, when I'm there alone with my children, and we had shotguns and rifles aimed at us. When you're in the movement, when you're, on this path for justice, you know that things are going to happen.
Although the Delano grape strike wasn't a success, they didn't stop fighting. Instead of having another strike, farm workers got together to boycott California table grapes.
So we went ahead and started the grape boycott. One of the tactics that we used very successfully is we got the chain stores to take the grapes out of the whole chain.
Once grapes were no longer being sold, contracts were signed with growers.
Strikebreakers. So what we did is we started a national boycott of California table grapes. And when the employers, they saw that they couldn't sell their grapes and they weren't making a profit anymore, so then that's when they decided that they would sign contracts with the union. Basically, one of the big provisions that we got for farm workers was the right to have toilets in the fields. And people don't realize that the crops that are picked in the fields go into the box, they go to the supermarket, and they don't go through the car wash, right? So the way that those fruits and vegetables are put into that box is the way it goes to the supermarket. And it's horrifying to think that farm workers didn't even have toilets in the fields, or cold drinking water, or soap and hand washing facilities, and yet all of that produce is going directly to the supermarket. So we were able, we got that into our contracts in 1966. We finally got it as a state law again in 1975. It did not become a national law until 1985. And so now we do have a national law that says employers have to have toilets in the fields for their workers, separate for, one for men and one for women, and they're supposed to keep them clean also. So
in 1986, they passed legislation for the legalization of 1,400,000 farm workers, and Ted Kennedy helped make this possible.
one of the things that we are working on is, number one, bringing to the attention of the American public what the contributions of immigrants are, because they don't realize how much people do. The work that they do, picking our food, we remind people the food that you ate today, some immigrant picked that food, probably an undocumented person. We have to legalize the people that are already here because they have earned it with their work and with their tax dollars that they have paid and their contributions that they have made to our economy. We got driver's licenses in Spanish and other ethnic languages, and we got the ballots in the Spanish language, and disability insurance for farm workers. And then we passed a law that you could register voters door to door. And so we were able to pass a very important law to take away the requirement that you had to be a U.S. citizen to get public assistance.
In 2012, Dolores Huerta was awarded the Medal of Freedom by President Obama that she shared with all the farm workers who helped make change possible.
We as women, we've got to put big lights around our accomplishments, right? And around our ideas, and not feel that we're being egotistical when we do that, because it's a way of letting the world know that yes, we as women can accomplish great things.
Dolores Huerta was a brave, hardworking woman who didn't give up until things were right. She changed the lives of millions of farm workers nationwide. In an interview on C-SPAN, Dolores explained that what you learn and what you teach is that people have power. You don't have to be rich, you don't have to speak the English language, you don't even have to be a U.S. citizen, but you do have power and you can make changes. If you put your mind to something and are committed to doing what's right to help other people, like how Dolores was, you can change the world.